Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am in search of balance. Yes, and each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, and comment on this episode and rate it.
And subscribe and ding that bell. We also do statting. And now the disclaimer: the thoughts and opinions expressed on At the CCC are as long as we do not represent anyone but ourselves. The information and thoughts shared here are for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
So we went on this rafting trip. So we went on this rafting trip this last weekend.
Yeah.
And oh God, I hope I can do this justice. But we were joking around about how how like in public bathrooms there's like foot tapping thing.
Yeah.
In order to hook up. Tap. And we thought like how funny would it be if like someone was tapping but you looked in the other stall and someone was like doing the doom 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 like a full ass like number, like Broadway number.
I love that.
And a top hat and everything.
Right on. So it was a lot of fun, huh? The rafting.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw the pictures and I looked at all the people in the pictures. I'm all, you assholes.
I wanted so bad. Not so bad, but I've been wanting to go on that trip. It's the Healing Waters trip. It's done once a year.
Nice. Well, twice. I thought
it's done twice a year.
Yeah, I think they have 2 dates. They do it. Or at least they have. I don't know if they're doing 2 dates this year.
Yeah. That sounds like fake news. But I think that with the
wow. Okay.
But it was such a good time.
One day Anthony was Puerto Rican and the next day he was black. What happened? It's like one day is
Call me Kamala Harris.
Oh
no. Well, did you see? Oh my God, I was watching. There was the black journalist.
Oh yeah.
Something like that, and he was like at the convention was questioning whether or not she was actually black.
I know, it's like the biggest snowflakes because like never before as a president, it's like he sits down. Well, you started out hot. You didn't even say hi to me. The questions were nasty and you were mean and whatever. And I'm all thinking, it's like
you're running for president, bro.
Yeah, get over yourself.
Yeah, and then today I stumbled upon a live recording of Blacks Against Harris.
Oh God, I know.
And I was like listening to it, and I was like, "Oh my God, who put you up to this?"
Some people are making money. It's like anyway.
How are you?
I'm good. It's like I'm all. What I realized is like so I stayed in town working or whatever, and it was Dore weekend, and what I realized like with Pride and everything else, I can participate in it without participating in it.
Oh yeah, what do you mean?
I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, but I didn't have to go to the actual like fair to have a good time.
Wait, how did you participate without participating?
Let's just say that there are things on the periphery. Like I just catch what's on the outside.
Oh, you put out like a fit. You put like out a fish net. You put like a. Throw a lure.
I wait for people to walk past my place and I pull them in. Get in here. This is my version of Dore.
Yeah, that's why we have so many missing people posters in the Castro.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time jabbering or whatever, and this one in the middle has been so patient.
I know. So we have a special guest on today.
This is a long time coming.
This is a long time coming. Shall I introduce him?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so many of you know I talk about my partner a lot, and I
have
Benji,
the receipts.
And so it's my partner Benji, but he's so much more. He's so much more than that. He's an associate marriage and family therapist. Isn't that right, Benji?
That's right.
Right. He's a mover and a feeler, and he's a practitioner of body-based modalities. So he's a somatic therapist. And for those who may not be familiar with that, it's like a lot of us who are in therapy are familiar with like therapeutic modalities. We spend a lot of time talking and being in our heads. And he's the kind of therapist that actually gets you into your body and to concentrate on like physical sensations as opposed to just being in the narrative head. He's also a person in recovery. He's someone I love very, very much. And the last things I'll say about him is that I think, separate from being my partner, I think he's incredibly insightful. He has very interesting ideas. And I think it's people like him that make the world a better place.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I meant every word of it.
Oh. Well, it's such an honor to be here on the podcast.
He even sounds like a therapist.
Also,
doesn't he sound like a therapist?
Benji's one of our faithfuls from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Do you know why?
Don't share.
No, I won't share. No receipts. So Benji, the reason why we have you on for people listening, and you know this already, but the way we structure the podcast, especially throughout the month, is in the beginning of the month, we introduce a topic. It's just, me and Louis. We have folks in the middle of the month to like talk about it. And then at the end of the month, we try to have some type of expert or someone who has some level of understanding, a deeper understanding of the topic that we're talking about.
Come in and pick apart everything we talk about.
Yeah, that's right. And so we have Benji on specifically about relationships and recovery. Benji, a lot of his work has been in rehabilitation centers. He's worked in rehabilitations on one end on the luxury side, luxury rehabilitation centers. And now he's doing, what do you say? I mean, it's still part of like a major company, but it's less luxury and more, what do you say, like... What would you call your rehab?
Well, it's outpatient. Right now I'm doing partial.
Oh, right.
Yeah, partial hospitalization, intensive outpatient. Mm-hmm. Yeah, previously I was working in residential. But yeah, it's just for folks who feel they need more care, more treatment, more comprehensive care.
Yeah.
You're doing good with the mic, by the way.
Yeah, you're doing a good job with the mic. I've always liked your voice, but I didn't realize how soothing it was.
Is this what? This is exactly what. Oh yeah, great. It's like I'm off.
You're just realizing that now.
Louis is like,
yeah,
all right.
This is hot. Oh my God, I can't wait till this is over. It's like I'm gonna get you home and strip you down. Yeah, Daddy.
Fuck you, Louis.
I'm here for you. It's like, you're giving me material. It's like, it's not like I don't have anything to work with.
I get it. You're lonely.
Okay, yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, God, I love you so much.
You need to record that laugh. And play it every now and then. Was like, I'm off.
I'm taking myself off the mic. I don't even remember what we were talking about.
That's okay. Well, we were talking. You were just blowing smoke up his ass.
Well, and so this is an example of an unhealthy relationship. What were you going to say, Benji?
I can name something. So we're talking about interpersonal relationships, and one of the things that I've learned in my line of work is that interpersonal relationships are the number one cause for relapse.
Are you talking about our relationship?
All of them.
Benji said, I'm worried about your sobriety.
You know what I will say, because I came in hot. I love these two. I absolutely adore you guys.
Oh, we know.
I love you too. And while I've always talked about, like, I'm not really like wanting to be in a relationship now in this moment right now, I root for you. I love you, and I root
that's
for you.
really sweet.
Yeah, so that works. Yeah, so that's growth on my part.
That's really sweet. How funny would it be if we like break up on air right now?
I came onto the podcast for that exact.
I know Benji's like.
I know, it's like,
I waited till today.
like
I just want to let everyone know
Jerry
that
Springer shit.
So Benji, one of the things that so Benji and I kind of just coincidentally, we talk a lot about this kind of stuff like at home sometimes. And So one of the things that I appreciated, we were talking about, and Lewis and I have talked about this too, about how like when you see people in early recovery, a lot of times people will run to romantic or sexual relationships, right? And we see that a lot in the rooms. We see people kind of like go to relationships. And what I thought was interesting is that you also saw that in rehab and like in the residential rehab. And it isn't even unique to like gay people. It also like us straight people do it as well. And I think, can you say more about like, what do you think is happening there when people are rushing to sexual or romantic relationships in early recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we put down our drinks or drugs of choice, and all of a sudden we're kind of looking at the world. We're seeing things, with a fresh set of eyes, and we see a bunch of people. And we're like, oh, hey, you look good. And we're still looking for things to get away from ourselves, to escape us. If we've got a lot of discomfort inside of us, all these feelings that we've been numbing out, kind of a way that we might do that is by running into relationship with folks. So there can be all kinds of reasons, but that tends to be one. I think, there's a lot of risks that come with that. I think you kind of spoke about some of those last week when Jordan was here. But there's all kinds of relationships that people kind of find themselves in early recovery, not just the romantic ones. I've seen so many beautiful friendships, and I've certainly experienced that with myself, blossom really in early recovery with that same process there of like, okay, I can't do drugs anymore, but I need to do something, and finding like fellowship and friendships. Yeah, it's a really beautiful part of
Oh my
that.
God, you just made me think of something.
What is it?
No, okay, so like all this time I'd been centering in on like newcomers hooking up with other people or whatever, but there are so many other relationships that can be unhealthy. And I've been in them where I've had friendships or people that, I was so close to. They were in my tribe in the beginning, and then they relapsed or whatever the situation was, and it really kind of challenged it kind of knocked my foundation off, or it kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it just really kind of, when I came in, I thought that once you got sober, you stayed sober. I didn't realize that there was more to it and that there was more work in it. And for the longest time, folks would relapse and I would shut down. And it made it hard to open up to people because I was making their experience more about me, and not really kind of allowing people to, I didn't have any information, any truths, any facts around me relapsing over somebody else relapsing, but I was in fear, and it took a really long time to not be there. Yeah.
Did you have something, Benji?
Well, it's interesting because I've heard a lot of different advice given to folks who are in early recovery, whether it is to get really connected with other people who are in early recovery, or specifically not to do that just because of how many people will relapse and how difficult that can be. And so there's different like schools of thought out there on like what's the right thing to do. I think ultimately it's going to be a personal decision, but there's definitely a risk there. Yeah, of getting really close to someone and then, they relapse, and the kind of impact that has on you.
Yeah, I think a lot about so we're in a unique situation, right? Because we live in San Francisco. This is kind of like unique to big cities, is that you have like a large gay population that are in recovery. That's unique, right? Yeah. And most of my friends are people in recovery and are gay. And I sometimes wonder, like, what have I normalized as a result of being in these kind of like clusters that isn't actually quite helpful, right? So one of the things that I think about is like, there are a lot of volatile personalities, right? Like just this past weekend, a dear friend felt triggered by something that happened on the trip. And my instinct was to like take that on. I became like really codependent, and I started to like think about them a lot. Or I think about like getting close to newcomers, like you said, that go out, and how that has an impact on me. And so sometimes I wonder, like, is this like, is it always healthy to be around a bunch of people who are not healthy? Do you know what I mean? And that's just like an open question. I'm not saying that like I don't want to hang out with sober people because I love my community. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, are we hurting each other? You know? Especially when we talk about how, you know, a lot of people go out on relationships. And at the same time, I think we're also learning I should speak for myself. I am constantly learning how to be in relationship by being in relationship with other people in recovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what I would argue is like on the flip side of that, and so often, you know, I'll speak from my experience here. I came into recovery out of a period of like extreme isolation. You know, my world had gotten so small, I had withdrawn so far into myself that was a really dangerous place for me to be. And so even though there are unhealthy dynamics we might find ourselves in, or, you know, kind of challenging relationships that I see in recovery, I think the reverse of like being isolated and staying isolated can be so dangerous, especially to us addicts and alcoholics.
Your voice is very calm.
It's so soothing.
It's soothing. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's so soothing. I don't think I ever realized how soothing it was.
I think I love you.
I love you too.
So
I think I'm wet.
you know what? I feel like okay. So I feel like what's unique about not unique. What works with us, and what you were saying about like being around people who aren't. When we're focused in on our individual recovery, it's almost like the difference between the steps and then the traditions. Like I'm focusing on what I'm doing, and I'm paying attention to what I need to do for me. And as long as I'm doing those things, I feel like in relationship, we have to take risks.
Right.
Like if I shut down, if I'm isolated, if I'm not letting people in, there's no opportunity for me to practice growth or to put into practice the stuff that I'm learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so where I'm at now, like with what I was saying before, I struggled with that before, but now I had some of the best information from some folks with more experience. And they said, you know what? It's like the best thing that you can do is to allow people to have their experience, not make it about you, and just be loving and available when they show up. And, you know, sometimes I have to love people from across the street. I don't need to be that person if someone's going through something and I don't have the bandwidth to handle it. I don't have to be that person. I get to show up when I can. And especially if I'm able to show up in an altruistic way, in a loving way, in a supportive way that is going to allow that person to have their experience, you know? So,
I do know.
So it sounds like really healthy boundaries.
But it's taken a really long time.
Of course, yeah.
Because it hasn't, it's been messy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And what I encourage my sponsees to do, what I encourage folks who ask, because I also have to get to a place, like as much as I want to share, it's like if you don't want it and you didn't ask for it, I don't give it. But with my sponsees who are asking for it, I'm usually like, you know, it's going to, you know, once you find that voice or once you find that whatever that is, it's going to be messy. And so I want you to give yourself grace. And back to that Bonnie Violet word, give yourself grace. It's like, you got to figure it out. And this is how I sort through bullshit too. Because people who don't allow me to kind of go through that.
Right.
And mind you, I don't need to be like a tornado in people's life. And I don't get to use that as an excuse for poor behavior. But what I'm saying is, like, if I'm making an effort, if I'm trying to be genuine and treat you as thoughtfully as I can when I'm being messy. So yeah, I'm going to shut up.
There's so many things there. Go ahead.
I mean, I just, that reminds me of like my experience in recovery, and specifically here in the rooms in San Francisco, is just that that this community, more so than any other that I've been in before, is just so expansive in that way.
Yeah.
Right. That like, you don't have to get it right the first time. You can show up, you can be vulnerable, you can be a little messy, and it's like, and people will still, you know, be there to hold some space. You know, I think there is some accountability that, you know, like comes into play at some point, like you said, not being a tornado like forever, but like, I think there is generally the understanding that like we come in a little messy, and like we have some compassion for that and can like help each other, lift each other up, and like learn and grow. I've been inspired by that kind of aspect to our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look really good, by the way.
Thanks, lover.
I was trying. Okay.
Can we turn that fan up?
Okay, so a couple things here. So you guys have talked about a couple things. So I want to go back to this idea of isolation, right? Like being in addiction and being isolation. So for me, I will often I'll get anxious or I'll get uncomfortable or I'll be in a social situation and I want to I want to hide, right? And so what I'll find myself spending a lot more time by myself or not showing up to things, right? And there's this way that I think I've translated that behavior to be protective, I'm protecting myself when I feel sure, and there's also this harm that I cause myself by not allowing myself to continuously be in relationship, right? That isn't to say that I should be in relationship and then that I should be engaging in unhealthy relationships. But I feel like I can't just shut off the second something doesn't work out, right? I have to constantly be in relationship with different people. And I think the reason why I'm bringing that up is because most of the learning I think that I've experienced in the rooms or being sober has been through relationship. It's taking time to find the people that make me feel good. It's taking time to allow myself to have experiences where I'm hurt or uncomfortable or angry and working through that with other people. Because typically for me, at least historically, what I would do is I'm just not fucking with you anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hello.
Right.
Yeah, I was real good at that shit.
Yeah. Well, can I name a thing?
Yeah, name a thing.
So, in thinking about this podcast, I was thinking about just how hard interpersonal relationships are, especially if you are someone who has been chronically wounded in relationships.
Oh, say that.
Right. We can learn so many ways to guard ourselves or protect ourselves, or we can have so much wounding that is going to be really activated or triggered if we have relational wounds. Right. And so we'll get that anxious feeling or we'll get that impulse to withdraw or to flee. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Did I just throw you off by pushing you toward the mic?
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, well, I wanted people to be able to hear you.
I want them to hear that sexy voice and see how hot you are.
Hey, you sound like you work for NPR, babe.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Diane.
Oh my God. There's so much oh man.
There's so many bugs in this room right now.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Okay,
It's
so you know what's
Brian.
interesting? So I was listening to you, Anthony. It's this idea that I don't want to isolate and I want to be constantly in relationship. And what I realized because of the work that I'm doing, I've had personal wars going on with me while I have challenged myself to continue to be around people.
Yeah.
And it comes down to sometimes where, my decision to remove myself from someone or whatever is okay. Mm-hmm. It's a healthy thing. For whatever reason, I always say okay, so there was a time where the voices were negative and they were loud. And
meth-induced psychosis.
But not so much psychosis, but
Sure.
those naysayers or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I found myself with other people who are kind of supporting that through their actions or whatever. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is weird. It's I want those voices. I don't want those voices to be whatever. And I can't be around you. And, you just seem to be supporting this nonsense.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. It makes me think about, in order, and I'll speak in general terms here. I think in order for there to be healing, a person has to allow themselves to experience living. And by that, I mean, for every bad experience that you've had, there's potential for you to have healing experiences. And the only way we allow ourselves to have those experiences is by being in relationship. And so there is a degree of courageousness that we need And sometimes, and I think maybe where we get in trouble is when we have these very kind of inflexible ideas about what relationships are supposed to look like or how they're supposed to unfold, right? I think one of the things that's been coming up for me a lot recently has been like, nothing is that serious. And that's something my sponsor told me years ago. Nothing is that serious. There are no big deals, right? And I've been noticing like where my mind wants to grip around things, like when I want to hate on someone or when I want to be angry with something, and I'm like, oh, this is a choice. I have a choice to hold on and grip down on this thing. And so, I've been working on releasing that grip. Let me give you an example. The other thing I want to say is like, I think I have to allow myself to experience the full story of people, right? So for example, we were, Benji and I were on this trip recently, and someone was behaving in a way that made me really uncomfortable. And Benji and I had a conversation about it and it was fine. And then, the following day I was around this person and I got to learn more about them. And I was like, oh, what? And so I had like this changed perspective because I allowed myself to just kind of be curious and around this person, right? And then similarly, we have a mutual friend in the rooms who is known for being really volatile, and has been for very many years. And then the other day, maybe for the first time, I heard him like have a reaction, pause, apologize, and then like say out loud like, oh, I see what's going on here. And I'm like, what?
I was like, what?
Yeah, I was like, I hadn't like thought about that. And I want to, and that's that is emotional labor, and I feel like in order to do that kind of emotional labor, which we have to do with everyone at some point, I guess.
Yeah. Or we have to do with the people that if we talked about last week, if there's value to the relationship.
That's right. Yeah.
If I want more to that, then I need to be willing to do what you said, the labor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Benji, I see like I hear your grind, your wheels grinding. No thoughts. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, and then I was thinking too about how, some people, it can sometimes feel like you're walking in a minefield with them. Were you going to say something, Louis?
No, I was just thinking about how pretty you are, Benji.
I know, Benji is so pretty.
I love it. I know, exactly.
Yeah, some relationships can feel, like they can feel like a minefield, And when that happens, and to be less abstract, I think there are some people, throughout my life, either professionally or personally, where, you're talking to them and you feel like, oh my God, at any point I might say something and I don't even know what that something is. And you're going to snap, or you're going to misread something, or you're going to misunderstand something. What, babe?
Hypervigilance.
Yeah, hypervigilance. You want to say more about that?
Well, I mean, just where I'm kind of landing with both of these is, Louis, what I appreciate about your catchphrase so much, like finding balance, is that, we could talk about these examples in all kinds of different extremes, but I think the balance is the most important piece, right? Like knowing when it is time to leave a relationship or put up a boundary versus knowing when we might be kind of overbounded or habitually moving towards places of comfort and needing to challenge our own selves or our own beliefs. Yeah, there's a balancing act there.
And we're really fortunate. And I think you were talking about the things that we kind of normalize. I don't know that this is a bad thing. I always try to think about, like, I use this example. Like I used to always love to go home. I would not fellowship. Yep. I would go home. But if I were living in a small town and I didn't have that option, I would probably be actively seeking out people. So imagine if we were going to this in an area where there were not a lot of gay men, where there are not a lot of folks that you could have. We have so many opportunities to get this right.
No, that's right.
Constantly.
That's right.
Or to get it wrong.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I think I was just thinking about like the importance of outside help. So, although I appreciate 12 steps and I appreciate recovery-based programs, in my experience, when a person gets sober, either from process or substance addiction, And like I said, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, there's some underlying thing that's going on there that can't necessarily be addressed through step work or through any other kind of work. Benji, can you say a little bit about like when you think people might seek outside help?
He's like, can you say a little bit about my eyes?
Well, I'll share a little bit about my experience if that's helpful. So,
Sure.
I went to seek out my own therapy back in high school. I was going through, just really tough emotional stuff. I had an eating disorder. I, had been intensely bullied and was just not doing too well. And I had a really good experience in therapy in high school, but it was later in my life when I was struggling with really bad issues with my gut. I had really just intense, like persistent issues with my gut that brought me into like mindful meditation. And it was like through doing stress reduction techniques that like got me into my body that actually completely changed what was going on inside of me, which just got me to think that like there's a lot to like emotions, there's a lot to our stress reactions, how we manage that, that has like a profound impact on me. But it was all of the work that I was doing in that wasn't enough to get me sober. Like it definitely, I think, helped me get really stable and like stay sober once I got into the rooms and added the spiritual component to it. But I do hear that there are a lot of people in the rooms who are like, got their step work down, right? They're like throwing themselves into the steps and yet they're still really suffering with, it might be depression or anxiety. They're having really challenging patterns show up in their relationships and they're still struggling there. And that's where things like outside help, can be really useful. I'm a big fan of somatic therapy. I'm definitely biased there. I think, there's kind of a limit to what talking can address. And at some point we do need to actually like go to the body and listen to the feeling that is, kind of screaming at us there versus the, hamster wheel that can turn up here.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how, a couple of years ago, Leslie Cooper and I, we did a joint workshop on recovery and mental health, but like formal mental health treatment. And I remember thinking to myself that 12-step or working the 12 steps is how I live my life. And therapy is where I go when there are things blocking me from living my life, having a more complete life. And I think that when it comes to outside help, I have found that the most helpful stuff has been, what do I want to say here? I think because I didn't know I had a problem drinking and using, right?
Oh, yeah.
I just knew that I was uncomfortable, right? And so I think it was having a relationship with someone that felt safe where I was able to just say like, I'm uncomfortable. I don't really know what's going on, like that was the start of it for me with respect to outside help. I think I had therapists in the past say like, do you think it's your drinking? And of course I said, no, I don't think it's mine. Yeah. Speaking of, there was this one time I drunk dialed the therapist. Did I ever tell you about that, babe?
You what?
I drunk dialed the therapist.
I love that.
Yeah, once drunk dialed the therapist. Yeah.
What does that mean, drunk dial?
Drunk dial. Like
Drunk
when you're
dial.
drunk.
Called them while you were drunk.
Yeah. I called the therapist.
What are you wearing?
I can do that, yeah.
You up? I called my
You trying to fuck?
I called my
I know you want it.
This is a new segment of the show. It's like we're all, what's happening?
the scatting portion.
We have just invited a little levity into sometimes the conversation. I love it that the conversation can go where it's going.
Yeah.
But of course it's like, and that's because it's like, I feel like I trust you guys, and so we can just like go there.
Yeah. So
Thanks, Louis. I trust you too.
Yeah.
You've taught me so much on
stop.
this very
It's like,
podcast.
we've taught each other, huh?
One of the, so we do have a comment, but I wanted to tell you something. So, I was interviewed on a podcast, earlier this year, and the podcast is called, Where Do You Come From? Where Do You Go? and it's by a guy named Alex Schneider, I think is his last name. I was just listening to the episode a couple of days ago, and I love what he said about the podcast, and this is relevant and I'll tell you why in a second.
I love it. It's like, this is relevant.
This is relevant because it seems like such a non sequitur. But one of the things he said is like he talked a lot about his relationship with his uncle and how he saw, addiction in his family and how he saw addiction impact his family and, his relative in particular. And that one of the things he was thinking of is that when we talk about addiction, there's this whole world of it that we hear about, like people dying and people losing like everything, right? And that there's this other part of addiction that's actually quite joyous and it's quite liberated. And we don't often hear about that part of recovery, right? And I think a lot of people who are stuck in addiction don't know that there's this other side that is actually quite great. And I think that comparison is worth mentioning and highlighting because there is this other side, right, to addiction that is freeing and very generative, etc. So let's see that comment a little faster next time, Stephen. So it says
a little faster.
A little faster next time, Stephen.
Anka wrote, "Hi Anka, thank you for joining us. Outside help, I call it supervision because I should not be left unsupervised in this world."
Oh, I feel that.
I like that
Anka.
because when I get to the fourth step in the work that I'm doing with my sponsee, like I always say, okay, so this is probably the time, like if you've ever thought about getting some outside help, that it's good because I realize I'm not a therapist. I can open the door, but I don't know how to close it all the time. And so I want us to take this slowly. Let's communicate. Like if this is too much, if you don't feel like, because I used to just dismiss certain things that I was doing and that others was doing as procrastination or being difficult or whatever. And a lot of times what I realized is like, if there was a blocker, there's something I didn't want to talk about and I was putting it off, it was because maybe it was too much for me. And in knowing that, it's like, this is one of the reasons why I gravitated towards some outside help. I wanted someone who had the language, who understood and who could help me to kind of process and get past or break through, break free.
Benji, were you going to say something? That's okay if not.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, with the time that we have remaining, I want to talk about going back to this idea of being wounded in relationship and maybe what it looks like, maybe ideas that either one of you might have about like, what does it look like to recover from wounds that you had in relationship, either experiences you've had or anything else?
Can I say, when you were talking about this idea of wounded in relationship, I think it's also important to talk about, when I came in, I was a victim. I thought that everything was happening at me and I didn't see that I had a hand in it. And I'm not saying that every situation you're not, it's not a deliberate kind of wound, but there are some situations where it's like, after doing the work, like I heard somebody say, it's like when you do the 12 steps, your past starts to change. And my perception of how a situation is different, and so maybe my actions had a hand in what I categorized or what I said was someone else's kind of, what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
I do. What I want to say is like, I've heard that, the work that we do here with the steps in a lot of ways chips away at our ego. That like seeing our part in things, that changes our understanding of scenarios and of ourselves. What I'll say for me is I had to go to therapy to build together a structured sense of myself that I could then later on chip away at with the selves. Because of the wounds I had in relationship, my experience was so fragmented and was so shattered, and I didn't have a really consistent or stable sense of self that could stand to be, right-sized or, kind of examined with the steps.
That's really cool. I was just thinking about how your like I'm listening to your voice and I'm like, oh my God, he's so smooth and so gentle, and it makes me sound like
you only sound like that when you do that delivery. No, it's like I'm all.
You have a beautiful podcast.
Oh, thank you. I was just. we should start doing ska. Oh.
I know. We're gonna do a whole episode like, ba-da-ba-ba-bow, yeah.
We should bring out some spoons.
The musical episode. Oh my God. If you're watching, I want you to know that we are batshit.
100% sober. The other thing I don't want to gloss over it is the idea of like somatic healing. So getting out of the head and into the body. Can you say a little bit more of like what healing looks like on that level?
Yeah, I've heard it described this way, and I think a lot of people in my field would probably roll their eyes or be mad to hear me repeat this. But, I think a lot of like the cognitive based therapies, they're really good at providing like a Band-Aid, right? Like a really super effective Band-Aid to slap onto a wound, right? And Band-Aids are important. They do help promote healing, right? But the kind of work that is somatic work, I think it really lends itself to transformational change. And so like learning how to relate to myself and my wounds, my triggers, my trauma, the things that would send me, straight into a pile of powder, learning how to self-soothe and self-regulate and to like, just really like take care of me by myself without the need of another person. Like I needed to learn that with another person, learn how to regulate my body with another person in order to start being able to do that on my own. So there's a lot of information that comes with that, but then it's actually about like actually dropping down. And what I like about somatic therapies is it's very practical. It's very hands-on. Right? Learning how to give myself a hug is like kind of the most simple example of that, but like to feel into a sense of containment that I can provide with my own two hands when I'm having a big feeling can really help me get to the other side of it and to see it a lot more clearly.
Can you give an example of what like somatic work looks or sounds like?
Yeah. So, I'll repeat Pat Ogden here. Pat Ogden is an excellent practitioner here in the Bay Area. She says that with somatics, we're learning how to use our bodies as instruments for sensing what's going on with us and for regulating that experience. So I like to view it as studying how our experience gets organized in different component parts. What are the physical sensations that come with that? What are the emotions that come with it? The kind of energetic or spiritual qualities that come with it? Whatever. We can look to all these different ways that our experience gets organized. And the more that we can study that, the more that we have the opportunity to start to reorganize it, kind of update our hardware. Yeah, there's a lot more.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of introducing it. And also worth mentioning here is that where I find that to be the most helpful is in interpersonal relationships or relationships in general, because a lot of it, I'll speak for myself, a lot of kind of like the relationships that I have been explosive in, it happens at the level of my feeling body. So it's having a feeling in my body and allowing for that feeling to kind of like take me away somewhere, right? Like either I'm angry or I'm anxious, right? And there are ways that I didn't know that fear was manifesting in my body and that was causing me to behave in a certain way. And it wasn't until I got sober and, for example, started to do fourth step work, which is like you're doing a fearless and moral inventory of yourself, that it was, that was the first time I was actually looking at my part in something. And to, again, be less abstract, it was like, okay, sure, something happened and I had a very normal reaction to it, right? Like I was uncomfortable, I was upset, I was fearful. But how am I, or how have I allowed for those experiences to make things worse for myself? Yeah. Right. Were you going to say something, Lewis?
Well, I was thinking, in listening to about the somatic therapy, other therapies, even the steps or whatever, what it seems to me, like when we say don't leave before the miracle happens, because like you were saying, and like I came in and I didn't know exactly what it was that I needed. And the steps helped me to get to a certain point so that I could ask for, or I could connect with someone who could give me more information. And maybe therapy that I took or the therapy that I had didn't do what I needed it to do. And I was able to, and I'm more speaking like globally or worldly, like that I was able to kind of come in contact with someone who had a relationship with the somatics, So I feel like, all of it is useful, especially if you allow it to kind of, if you're not closed off to, and you allow yourself to go further, so.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Were you going to say something,
I'll
Mitch?
just give one last example of it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Since I've been here, I'm on camera. I'm feeling the hot lights on my cheeks. And I've been feeling nervous, but I've been noticing that nervousness and using my breath down at the diaphragm to start to regulate that. It's that sort of like tracking of my experience, using my body to regulate it, to get it to more aware of where I want to be, that I believe has brought me into much greater sense of my own power. Kind of having more control over my body and its responses.
Yeah, when that doesn't work, you just hit a bottle of poppers.
I got the power.
All right, let's land the plane.
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Oh, wow.
We said don't do that.
I just like the song so much.
It's still recorded. I specifically said don't make any noise. Oh my God, that is.
Have you guys noticed, like, sometimes like Jason and Steven, they were like they were like listening intently. It's like I'm all.
Oh, I did notice that. It's really sweet.
I really appreciate you guys like them all.
It's our live audience.
Yeah. Have y'all seen Schitt's Creek before?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yes. Do you know that one episode where Moira, she like auditions for the community choir? Do you remember that? Oh, it's so good. Anyway, I bring that up, Louis, because she scats in her audition. It was fucking hilarious.
They did a version. Did you see that? I guess for the teachers doing Shelter in Place, they sang with Mariah Carey because I guess one of the going things was one of the David was obsessed with Mariah Carey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you used to see it. It's like they sung a hero for the teachers, and it was really good.
That's so cool. Cute, yeah. Benji, what was that like for you?
Different than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect. I was very nervous.
Different good or different bad?
Different great. You guys made me feel so comfortable here.
But you probably were doing your breathings and breathing.
That helped.
Yeah.
That helped. I had
Benji, look where the sunburn was.
Do
you see where
is it peeling yet?
No, it's tan now. I got sunburn on my shoulders, Louis.
Oh.
So they're like darker. But like look at this side. Like it has like it's like dark.
Speaking to the mic.
I am speaking to it was like an echo.
We missed you on the rafting trip.
No, yeah, Louis, that would have been so nice. How could you miss
somebody that wasn't going to go in the first place?
Well,
no, I love
you would have had fun.
You would have had fun.
I probably, well, you know what's interesting? I was looking at the group that was going, and I probably would have spent more time with you guys.
You know,
Yeah,
so
probably.
speaking of interpersonal relationships,
Yeah.
I was really nervous about going. I
Why?
do this thing before trips. Like, it's hard for me to get out of my comfort zone. I get
Yeah.
scared. And, whitewater rafting, like, you can die.
Yeah.
But
We saved a life on our raft.
We sure
did I tell
did.
you that, Lewis?
Was it
We
what
literally,
bought?
so we were with the, he
was
was
it?
cute. I thought he was cute. What did you think, babe?
I don't even remember him.
Yeah,
I
you
remember like saving him, but
So
I was
he-
so like freaked out about this.
So we were
looking at him.
that's right. We were the sweep, which means that we were the last raft.
Okay.
And as the last raft, our job is to like monitor whether or not anyone gets swept away or they need help, right?
Okay.
And so we were thinking like, oh, nothing's going to happen. We're on the water, right? Sure enough, we come up upon
the first rapid.
The first rapid. We come up upon this raft,
And the black guy falls out of the boat.
no, and it was a and then, everyone, they had all fallen, the majority of them had fallen out of their raft. And we thought like, oh, that's crazy. And so they're trying to pull people in. And there was this one guy who could not get on the raft. He was like, he couldn't get his head
going,
above. He was going to, and then he
couldn't even get help
Yeah.
out of his mouth.
So
So water was like flowing
into his mouth. So he ends up getting pulled back. And so we take our raft and we go to get him and we pull him into the raft. And what's crazy, the two things that came up for me is the first thing is that we were taught beforehand how to rescue someone if that happened. So I was really grateful for the training. I thought that was really cool that the training actually came in handy. And then we brought him on. This guy was terrified. He could barely speak,
lost his shoe.
lost his hat, said he had swallowed a lot of water.
He'd been beaten up by the rocks.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really bad, but it was a really cool experience.
that really makes me want to go.
Yeah,
Like,
it was.
I'm super excited.
no, the cool thing
so
about
tell him what happened. They were drunk.
oh yeah,
Oh, he was
They were all drunk,
They had been
and
drinking.
even the guide,
Their guide.
who's not supposed to be drinking, even the guide was drunk.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but it was
Bad
cool
News
because we
Bears.
had such a cool guide who, like, our whole time going down the river, like, we never fell out unless we wanted to go in the water.
We never fell out.
Everybody else,
Okay,
like,
so
had,
that was.
but we were like a sober, well-oiled machine.
I love
Yeah.
that. I
Like,
love it.
we had a
Yeah.
really good guide, and then we were following instructions really well.
So, what was
Yeah.
the turning point for you? What happened? What was the shift that caused you to get,
To go.
No. You said it takes a while to get kind of.
Oh, well, I knew that I was doing the thing that I do. That, like, before a big trip or before an adventure, I get really like self, I don't know. I get anxious and I start to like self-doubt and question myself. And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to stay and everybody else go have fun. I'll just be here. But I was like, you know what? Like, these are all my friends. These are people I want to go like build relationships with. This sounds fun. I just need to take a leap of faith here.
Nice.
And I'm so glad I did. It was a really, really nice trip.
It was a really nice trip. And I had been wanting to go for years. But you know what's funny, Lewis, is that there was this time on the trip where I was like, what the fuck have I done? Why am I here? Because the first day we got there was like 107 degrees.
Oh God, I know.
And I'm not being exaggerating. I think it was 107 degrees
Yeah,
our first
that's
day there.
enough to.
Exaggerant.
I'm not exaggerating. I said what I said. I said what I said. What is that? Is this
These
the?
are photos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Am I in that one? Can you?
Yeah,
I
you're-
haven't seen that
You're
picture.
on-
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got. I saw this. It was
Can I see? Oh yeah, sorry.
We're
We're on air and we're
on
like
air,
looking at pictures.
I'm looking at the pictures.
I hadn't seen these pictures.
So you know what
yeah.
I will say about our conversation over the month. Well, there's still so much more that we haven't talked about. And it's like, it's one of those things, like, as we were talking, it's like, I'm like, oh wait, this, that. But you know, it's like, it's kind of like with the 6th and 7th step that I'm on with most of my sponsees. It's like, it's an ongoing process. And it's like, this is where my open-mindedness and my willingness comes in. Like, actually, I was talking to DK. Do you know DK?
Of course I do.
Oh, I love DK. And we were talking about the podcast, and I was talking about how, for me, where I'm at with it, like, I loved the interviews. I mean, I feel like I'm just passive observer, which is fine. No, with interviews, because usually I comment. No, it's not a problem. I'm fine because I'm growing in that. But I think Anthony does a really, really effective job.
Thank you.
Really good job. So, but for me, one of the things that I wanted to do, because initially, like I remember I wanted to do a Lewis Agenda podcast, and that would have been too conspiracy theory. I love the interaction. I love the connection, and I was talking to DK about possibly coming on because and she says, I think I would be too terrified, but really the idea is like we're creating problem solvers in us because we're having conversation. Like you're an expert, so are you, but I like to encourage folks to talk about shit. You know, you don't have to be the expert. You just have to bring your perspective as a sober person, you know, and be okay with, if I don't know, I'm open to figuring shit out.
Yeah. You know, that's so much of what made me feel comfortable today when I was reading through the guide for this, because, you know, I'm just starting out in my field. I'm not licensed yet. I've got my registration, I've got my master's, but like, I'm not quite an expert, you know, I'm not someone with 10, 20 years of experience.
But your voice and those eyes.
I appreciate
Oh yeah, that's hot.
But you know, you said you don't have to be an expert. Just come, we're having a conversation behind a mic. And that put me so much at a greater sense of ease where I'm like, I don't need to show up here and like be performing in some type of way. I can just be myself and see what shows up.
Absolutely. And come on, it's like the cheerleading over there is like, oh my God, I love you. You're amazing. It's like my life was not complete until I met you.
Oh my God.
Bow.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about with respect to the podcast and relationships is that, you know, obviously we've grown over the years. I've talked about that a lot. But that what I love about the podcast the most is that there is like community being formed around it. So like the people that are listening is that we're in relationship. We don't know who listens. We don't know like how people are being impacted, if they are at all. But it's nice to know that, well, I've been thinking about the country too. And it's like, it's nice to know that, you know, there's a bunch of like gay people behind a mic in recovery, like talking about life. And that feels very valuable to me. And it's why we welcome people to like send us emails and chime in, because we really do see this as like a community effort and engaging thing to do.
Can I say a thing as someone who listened to the podcast, who was, you know, engaging with it before, you know, you and I even started dating? You didn't.
We're bringing people together.
You sure are. But, you know, one of the questions that I know you ask us on this podcast is about, you know, what is your relationship with your higher power? And I was thinking about that question because so much of my relationship with my higher power was formed during a time where I was listening to you all talk about your relationships with your higher powers and your guests. And, you know, the relationship that I have now, Lewis, I always think about what you had said about like, I talk to my higher power like I talk to a friend. And that was such a pivotal change for me because I grew up in, you know, the church of my parents, and I grew up like praying like, oh God, you know, please, Rachel, you know, like, you know, very much that, and not this conversation that I would have like I would with a friend. And once I started, you know, talking with my higher power like I would a friend, things really started to change for me in my own spiritual development.
This is like magic, and you're like magic because we don't always get an opportunity to hear like how we've affected people.
Yeah.
And so when you hear it and I can receive it without being all bashful, because I think somebody said it's also, you know, that fake kind of modesty. Oh no, I couldn't have possibly helped you in any way. No, which is
you
like,
really did.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Wink.
Wink.
Wink. One last thing, unless you guys have anything, but I was just thinking about how the camera's not on, but Benji's touching my face.
So pretty.
Thanks. So I was thinking about how like the role of ego in relationship and how, okay, so when I was a baby clinician, I remember thinking that I was this expert and that I was this authority, and I wanted to be treated in that way. And because of recovery and because of like forming my own identity as a clinician, I realized that that's actually not the way I like operating in the world. Number one. Number two, it doesn't feel good. And number three, that actually we're kind of like, no one really knows anything. You know what I mean? Like we have estimations of things, but there's all this room for the miraculous. There's just, and ultimately, obviously, we can have like some level of like expertise, right? But that's coveted knowledge is different from like deeper felt knowledge. And what I'm saying is that there's this whole realm of life that exists, that is spiritual, that is kind of unpredictable, that is filled with possibility. And that's what I try to stay in touch with, especially when I have like these very kind of rigid ideas about what relationships look like or what life looks like, et cetera. What were you going to say, Benji?
No, I just, especially in the political climate that we are in nowadays, I find, I just get like concerned with like casting doubt on the idea of knowledge or like having knowledge or like that, there can be, multiple truths or alternative facts and stuff like that. But that's not at all what you were saying.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think what I am saying, or what at least is coming up for me, is that oddly enough, I feel like I have this new relationship with a power greater than myself that I choose to call God, right? And that it's very different from like the God of my understanding when I was growing up versus the God of my understanding today. Love it. And that is filled with possibility, right? And that I have this like simple human mind, and we all have these simple human minds, and we can't possibly fully grasp what potential there is.
Absolutely. The man that knows something knows that he knows nothing.
That's right. Let him know.
But I think that we're done. It's like,
I think we are done. are done. And as usual, if you've listened this far, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you're a long time listener. Thank you, Benji.
Thank you both.
Yeah. If you're a long-time listener, thank you so much. If you're new, keep coming back. Come back.
Thank you, Jason and Steven.
Yeah, thank you to our production team.
And Brian over there on his phone.
Production team.
And in the end, we love you.
Yes.
Bye.